On March 3, 1943, a single squadron of modified B-25 bombers wiped out an entire Japanese convoy. 3,000 men dead in 15 minutes. The U.S. Army never approved these planes. In fact, building them was a court-martial offense. They weren't authorized by any design bureau, no engineer signed off on them, and nobody at Army Air Force's headquarters had approved the weapons bolted onto them. They were the personal science project of one man who believed that if a bomber couldn't kill a ship at low altitude, it wasn't worth building. So he tore into a perfectly standard B-25 Mitchell and rebuilt it into something Washington didn't recognize: a bomber that fought like a gunship. In early 1943, American airmen in the Southwest Pacific were flying B-25 Mitchell bombers exactly as the manuals instructed. At medium altitude, level bombing, dropping ordnance on Japanese shipping from thousands of feet up. The results were terrible. Most bombs missed. Convoys slipped through. Japan kept reinforcing New Guinea, and Allied troops kept dying because no one could stop the ships bringing more men and supplies. One officer decided the rules were the problem. His name was Pappy Gunn. He wasn't a West Point graduate, and he didn't run a design bureau. He was a former U.S. Navy enlisted aviator and aircraft mechanic, the kind of man who would rather solve a problem with a wrench than a meeting. Gunn's idea would break procurement rules, engineering regulations, and command expectations. It would also produce one of the most lethal anti-shipping aircraft of the war, a bomber that didn't bomb from above but attacked like a flying shotgun. Paul Irving Pappy Gunn was born in Arkansas in 1899. He joined the U.S. Navy young, served as an enlisted pilot, and learned aircraft inside and out. By the time the U.S. entered the war, he wasn't an academic strategist. He was a hands-on problem solver who could diagnose a malfunction by sound and rebuild planes with salvaged parts. In 1942, General George C. Kenney, newly commanding Allied air operations in the Southwest Pacific, noticed something the War Department didn't want to admit. American bombing methods weren't working in this theater. Bombers dropped ordnance from altitude designed for European industrial targets, not island convoys. Kenney needed someone who didn't care about the rule book, and he found Gunn. Gunn wasn't reckless. He was pragmatic. The Japanese were reinforcing bases along New Guinea faster than the Allies could push them out. Most of those reinforcements arrived by ship. Stop the ships and the Japanese advance stalls. But to do that, air crews needed a plane that could attack low, fast, and accurately, one that didn't yet exist in the U.S. inventory. That's the problem that turned a bomber mechanic into a weapons designer. Before Gunn stepped in, U.S. doctrine called for high-altitude, level bombing against shipping, the same tactics used over Europe. In the Southwest Pacific, this wasn't just ineffective, it was pointless. Japanese captains could change course before bombs landed. Even direct hits were rare. The Allies were burning fuel and risking crews for almost no results. Other solutions weren't much better. Torpedo bombers flew low and straight, making them vulnerable. Dive bombers could be accurate, but their payloads were too small to reliably sink transports. The Japanese convoy system, essential to their entire Pacific strategy, was surviving everything the U.S. threw at it. Gunn realized something everyone else missed. It wasn't the aircraft that were failing, it was their purpose. Medium bombers weren't designed for low-level attacks, but if you modified one into a forward-firing gun platform, you could fly it low, suppress shipboard guns with heavy machine gun fire, then release bombs at mast height, causing them to skip across the water and detonate against the hull, a tactic later known as skip bombing. To do that, he needed to redesign the B-25 from the inside out, and no one in Washington had authorized any of it. Pappy Gunn didn't wait for permission. At a supply depot near Brisbane, he rolled a B-25 Mitchell into a maintenance hangar and began stripping it like it was a broken farm truck. He ripped out the Norden bomb sight, removed the ventral turret, and cleared space in the nose. Then he started bolting 50 caliber machine guns directly into the forward fuselage. First 2, then 4, then more, as he realized the airframe could take the recoil. No manual covered this. No engineering officer had approved it. Guns, scavenged barrels, ammunition chutes, and brackets from wrecked aircraft, welding and machining parts on site. By the time he was finished, the bomber no longer had a glazed bombardier's nose. It had a solid metal one bristling with guns. The Mitchell had stopped being a bomber at all. It was now a gunship. Word spread across the airfield. Gunn had turned an American medium bomber into something the Air Corps hadn't ordered and didn't officially want. Kenny visited the hangar, looked at the grotesque nose packed with firepower, and asked just one question. Will it work? Gunn didn't bother answering. He just told Kenny to find him something worth shooting at. So now there was a gunship, but it still needed a tactic. Normally, bombers flew high and dropped explosive ordnance from altitude, hoping for a lucky hit. Against moving ships, that strategy was useless. Gunn studied Japanese convoys creeping along the coast of New Guinea and realized something no one else had acted on. Ships can't dodge a bomb that slides across the water like a stone. Low-level crews began training off the coast with real bombs, flying 50 feet above the waves and releasing ordnance timed to bounce across the surface. The first tests were terrifying. If the fuse timing was wrong, the bomb detonated under the aircraft. Gunn's solution was to combine the new nose guns with the bomb run, strafe the ship first, kill the deck gunners, then skip the bombs in at mast height. In one maneuver, the B-25 went from medium bomber to maritime executioner. It didn't need precision, it needed aggression and a straight line of fire. The first combat test came in early 1943 against Japanese vessels supplying garrisons in New Guinea. Standard bombers had been trying for months to stop those convoys and failed. Gunn's modified B-25s came in low, not in formation thousands of feet up, but at the height of telephone poles, guns already firing. Anti-aircraft crews on the transports didn't even have time to adjust elevation. The B-25s shredded them with 50 caliber fire, then released bombs that skipped across the water and slammed into the ship's hulls. Several transports were torn open, others caught fire, and the escorts never recovered control of the battle. Pilots later joked that the B-25 didn't bomb ships, it mugged them. In a single strike, Gunn proved an outlaw upgrade could do what official doctrine had failed to achieve for a year. And he wasn't finished. On March 2, 1943, a Japanese convoy attempted to move thousands of soldiers to reinforce their positions in New Guinea. 8 transports and 8 destroyers made up the fleet. A lifeline of troops, ammunition, and vehicles the Japanese believed would secure their foothold in the Southwest Pacific. What they didn't know was that Gunn's B-25s were waiting for them. Instead of appearing overhead, the American aircraft skimmed the ocean surface. Forward guns roared first, cutting down anti-aircraft crews and blasting wheelhouses. Pilots opened fire so early and at such low altitude that tracer fire kicked up seawater. And then came the bomb runs. The B-25s released their bombs just yards from the ships, letting them bounce once or twice like skipping stones before slamming into hulls. Several transports were struck below the waterline. One exploded outright. Others began listing within minutes. Soldiers packed on deck, many without life jackets, jumped into oil-slicked water already burning. In roughly a quarter of an hour, the convoy was no longer a convoy. It was debris, bodies, lifeboats, and burning metal. The Japanese lost most of the force they had intended to land. A tactic invented in a hangar, unauthorized, unapproved, and almost accidental, had just annihilated an entire troop movement. Gunn had turned a medium bomber into a weapon that erased armies. After the Bismarck Sea, senior officers who once dismissed Gunn's ideas as reckless suddenly wanted his aircraft. Squadrons across the Southwest Pacific demanded conversions. Gunn became the man everyone called when they wanted a bomber modified, upgraded, or rebuilt into something that didn't yet exist. What had begun as one man's improvisation turned into an official program. The 5th Air Force standardized skip bombing procedures. Crews trained specifically for low-altitude attacks. Gunn's modifications, once technically grounds for a court-martial, were now doctrine. There was one more consequence. Japan stopped using large transport convoys in daylight along the New Guinea coast. They had no counter for aircraft that could destroy a formation before escort ships could coordinate defenses. Pappy Gunn never became a household name. He didn't write memoirs or build a brand out of wartime stories. He stayed in the Pacific theater, continuing to modify aircraft and develop strike tactics until the war ended. His work was absorbed into the normal manufacturing pipeline. The United States stopped treating the gun-nose bomber as a stunt and began treating it as a category of aircraft. After the war, he went back to civilian aviation in the Philippines, worked in airline operations, and continued flying and maintaining aircraft. In 1957, he died in a peacetime crash during a routine flight.